Welcome back to Blue Jays Focus, everybody. The Toronto Blue Jays have been swept by the Chicago White Sox, and there is no version of that sentence that does not sting. Losing a series to one of the weaker rosters in the American League is painful enough on its own. Getting swept by them while battling a combination of injuries, illness, and offensive dysfunction is the kind of start to a season that demands an honest and thorough accounting of what is actually happening with this organization. Today, we are going to do exactly that. Break down the full picture of what the Blue Jays are dealing with, examine the roster moves the organization made in response, and look ahead to what is an immediate and unforgiving test in the form of the Los Angeles Dodgers series starting tonight. There is a lot to cover, so let us start with the context that is not getting nearly enough attention in the broader conversation around this team's struggles. The Toronto Blue Jays are dealing with a legitimate illness outbreak in their clubhouse, and the impact of that outbreak on player performance is something that deserves to be part of any honest evaluation of what we have watched over this past series. Eric Lauer came out publicly after his start and revealed that he pitched through what he described as the worst illness he has experienced, barely able to keep food down and surviving primarily on liquid calories. His fastball was sitting around 86 miles per hour, a number that tells you everything you need to know about how compromised he was physically. The fact that the Blue Jays needed him to take the ball regardless of his physical condition reflects just how depleted this pitching staff has become. Lauer is not the only one dealing with it. The illness has moved through the clubhouse and affected multiple players, compounding an injury situation that was already difficult. When you map out the current state of the Toronto roster, Santiago Espinal, Alek Manoah, Shane Bieber, Jose Barrios, Yusei Kikuchi, Cody Ponce, Alejandro Kirk, and Addison Barger, all either injured or dealing with health concerns. With a stomach illness circulating on top of all of that, the picture that emerges is one of a team fighting through a genuinely adverse set of circumstances through the first 9 games of the season. That context does not excuse the offensive performance, and it is important to be clear about that distinction. The illness and the injuries explain some of what we are seeing, but they do not account for the full scope of the offensive dysfunction this team has displayed. The Blue Jays were swept by a White Sox pitching staff that, Grant Taylor aside, should not be generating this kind of result against a Toronto lineup with the talent it possesses. The offense has been unable to drive in runners in scoring position on a consistent basis, has struggled with plate discipline at critical moments, and has simply not executed the kind of at-bats that the lineup is capable of producing. John Schneider addressed it publicly, and his comments were pointed. He said that the Blue Jays need to get back to playing their brand of baseball, and that regardless of the opponent, the venue, or the timing of the game, failing to play good baseball produces bad outcomes. That framing from a manager who tends to be measured in his public assessments is a clear signal that the internal standard is not being met and that accountability is being applied at the organizational level. The specific offensive concerns go beyond the team-wide struggles. Dalton Varsho has been difficult to watch through this early stretch. His performance has been well below what this lineup needs from the outfield spot he occupies. Nathaniel Lowe has been a problem in the lineup construction conversation as well, particularly in a batting order position that requires consistent contact and on-base ability. There have been plate appearances where swing decisions have been poor at precisely the moments where a disciplined approach would have extended innings or created opportunities for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You cannot have those kinds of at-bats from hitters batting in front of the best offensive player on the roster. It undermines the entire lineup structure. Addison Barger, leaving yesterday's game with bilateral ankle discomfort, adds another name to an already crowded injury and availability list. He stumbled on the first base bag on a play that was handled excellently by the White Sox shortstop, was evaluated by the coaching staff during the game, and remained in for a few more innings before the discomfort became significant enough to affect his availability. Adding Barger to the list of players the organization needs to monitor going forward is the last thing the Blue Jays needed heading into a series against the defending World Series champions. Now let us talk about the moves, because the organization responded to the sweep with a series of transactions that reflect both the urgency of the moment and some longer-term organizational thinking. The headline move is the one the fan base has been asking for since the second half of last season. Brendan Little has been optioned to Triple-A Buffalo. This decision was inevitable given the trajectory of his performances, and the only legitimate debate was whether the organization would act quickly enough to prevent additional damage. They acted. Little has been a significant liability in high-leverage situations over an extended stretch. His ERA, WHIP, and opponents' production over his last 41 appearances paint a picture of a pitcher who has completely lost what made him effective, and carrying him in a major league bullpen while the losses accumulated was no longer a defensible organizational position. The important framing here, however, is that this is not a permanent verdict on Little's career. Keegan Matheson captured it well before the move was made official. Little still controls how this season and this chapter of his career unfolds, and the AAA environment provides the time, the lower stakes, and the developmental space for him to work through what has clearly become both a mechanical and a mental challenge. There was a period not long ago where Brendan Little was one of the premier left-handed relievers in the American League. That ability does not simply disappear. What appears to have happened is a pitcher who got into his own head, lost confidence in his primary offerings, and has been unable to break the cycle in a major league environment where every mistake is magnified. Buffalo gives him the opportunity to break that cycle away from the daily pressure of a pennant race. Whether he takes advantage of that opportunity remains to be seen, but the organizational decision to send him there was correct and necessary. Replacing Little in the bullpen is Joe Mantiply, a left-handed veteran who brings a different profile to the relief corps. Mantiply is not the same pitcher he was during his All-Star caliber 2022 season. His fastball velocity has declined from the low 90s to the high 80s, and his 2025 numbers were uneven. But in yesterday's appearance, he delivered an inning and a third of hitless, scoreless work that was exactly what this bullpen needed. The Blue Jays are not asking Mantiply to be an elite left-handed weapon. They are asking him to be a competent, experienced southpaw option who can get left-handed hitters out in a variety of situations. Based on yesterday's showing, that is a reasonable expectation. Mason Fluharty remains the primary left-handed option in the relief corps, and the organization has made clear through its usage patterns that he has genuine trust from Schneider and the coaching staff. The addition of Mantiply gives the Blue Jays a second left-handed option for the first time in weeks, which increases the flexibility available to the manager in late-game situations. Austin Voth was also called up, primarily to provide length in a game where Eric Lauer's illness-impacted workload was going to be limited. Voth is not a high-impact major league arm. He finished last season with a negative WR for the Seattle Mariners, but he posted a 3.69 ERA across his outings and provides the kind of innings-eating capacity that a depleted pitching staff needs on certain days. His role here is functional rather than impactful, and expecting anything beyond length and competence would be misaligning the expectations with the profile. He provides what the team needs him to provide in a specific and limited context. Cody Ponce has been transferred to the 60-day injured list, which effectively ends any conversation about his availability for the foreseeable future. The 60-day designation means he cannot be activated for at least 2 months, and given the nature of the injury, the realistic timeline likely extends beyond that minimum threshold. Ponce had generated some optimistic commentary about a potential early return, but that conversation is now closed. Anthony Santander's placement on the injured list was an expected development that has been telegraphed for some time. The Blue Jays managed his initial IL designation at the 15-day level, which is a standard organizational practice that preserves flexibility before committing to a longer designation. The 60-day transfer reflects the realistic recovery timeline, and Santander's absence for an extended period removes a meaningful offensive presence from a lineup that is already short on consistent run production. Bowden Francis was optioned to AAA Buffalo in a corresponding move, a decision that reflects roster necessity rather than any particular judgment on his performance. He delivered 4 hitless innings in his most recent appearance and has done nothing to diminish the organizational confidence in his long-term role. His spot was simply needed for the arms the Blue Jays required to address the immediate situation. Looking at the standings picture, the Blue Jays have fallen to 4-5 following the sweep, dropping below 500 and sliding to third in the American League East. That is not where anyone in the organization expected to be through 9 games, but the context of the division is worth acknowledging. The AL East has not produced a dominant early-season leader beyond the New York Yankees, and the race within the division remains genuinely open. The Yankees themselves have not been the juggernaut that their roster construction suggested they might be through the first week. The Blue Jays have the talent to recover from a 4-5 start, and doing so begins with how they respond to the immediate challenge in front of them. That challenge is the Los Angeles Dodgers, who begin a series in Toronto tonight. There is no more difficult opponent in all of baseball right now. The Dodgers possess the most complete roster in the sport from top to bottom, elite starting pitching, a loaded lineup, and a bullpen that has been constructed specifically to protect leads. Playing the Dodgers while dealing with illness, injury, and offensive funk is not an ideal sequence of events, but baseball does not offer the option of scheduling challenges at convenient moments. What the Blue Jays need from this series, more than wins, though wins would be enormously beneficial, is a reset in approach and mentality. They need to see their lineup execute quality at-bats against elite pitching. They need to see their relief corps perform with cleanliness and confidence following the roster adjustments. They need to see their players who have been struggling, particularly Dalton Varsho and the hitters at the top of the order, make better decisions at the plate and begin to approach what they are capable of producing. The talent on this roster is real. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., when he is locked in, is one of the most dangerous offensive players in the sport. The pitching staff, when healthy, has legitimate depth. The organizational moves made over the past 24 hours, sending Little down, adding Mantiply, bringing in Voth for length, reflect a front office that is actively managing the situation and making corrections. Patrick Corbin's imminent activation from his AAA rehab assignment, following an impressive 5-inning, 9-strikeout outing for Buffalo, is going to provide additional starting depth at exactly the right moment. This is a team that is fighting through a convergence of bad luck, illness, injury, and early-season performance variance simultaneously. That is a difficult set of circumstances, but the organizational response has been appropriate, and the underlying talent suggests that a correction is both possible and likely. The question is how quickly it comes, and whether the Dodgers series provides the reset moment this roster needs. Let us know in the comments what you think is the biggest problem facing the Blue Jays right now. Is it the offense, the injuries, the illness, or something else entirely? Drop your take below. If you are not yet subscribed to Blue Jays Focus, this is where we cover the Toronto Blue Jays every single day throughout the 2026 season with honest, analytical coverage. Hit the like button if you found today's breakdown valuable, and we will see you in the next one.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.